to Epic Sages, where your journey begins. Our shelves are stacked high, where the magic never ends. From dice that roll true to tomes ancient and wise, we've got all the essentials for your game to arise. With adventure in mind, we craft every piece to make your campaigns flourish, your stories increase. For every TTRPG dream, our stock is refined. Come find your next quest, leave the mundane behind.
Epic Sages, where you find satisfaction. We bring the spark, you bring the passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction.
Online store's a wonderland, easy to explore, with service that shines whether in person or more. Need advice on your journey? We're here to assist. For novice and veteran, no wish will be missed. We've got what you need from the basic to the grand, to bring your world to life with a masterful hand. From maps that expand to characters that bind, Epic Sages, always with adventure in mind.
Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. We bring the spark, you bring the passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction.
Your game with custom pieces so fine, handcrafted with care, designed to make you shine. From miniature heroes to landscapes vast, we build every detail to make the magic last. When the final dice is rolled and the journey is done, we offer keepsakes that remind you of the battles you won. In every treasure we offer, memories are signed. Epic Sages, always with adventure in mind.
Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. We bring the spark, you bring the passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. We bring the spark, you bring the passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction.
Hi there.
Yeah, I got it.
Morning, everyone.
I think it was pretty interesting. Hey, everybody, my name is Ode. I am the owner of Eyeball Productions. We specialize in creating graphic novels and mangas with a focus on animation. You also can find me on Instagram at Eyeball Productions. Find me on Facebook at the same. I don't think so.
Hey there. My name is B, and I'm the founder of something called Spirit Moxie, which is a vision of the things we can do together to change the world, make a difference, and all that other good stuff. And if we're saying you can find me as B Sedgwick on Facebook. The Spirit Moxie is spread everywhere. It's Instagram, everything, pretty much. That's the short version. Have a couple books and like hanging out, so I'm glad to be here.
At least we all can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, again, 10 seconds. Let me get this on the right stuff. It's all goofed up. I hate when that happens. I apologize.
Pleasure to see you again, Odie. I am younger. I am Rook's business partner. A quick introduction.
For the 4 billionth time, he returns. Wahaha.
Where are you located?
I am located in Arkansas. However, I've known Rook for almost a decade now.
More than that. Anyway, now that I've fixed the sounds, the topic, Paws and flaws and flaws. Trafficking companions with your stuff, which is really upsetting because I don't think they would have means you guys heard the music, which is great, but I don't think when we watch the episode they're gonna miss the intro, and now I'm sad. But that's okay. They've heard it 4 billion times, it'll be alright. And last but not least, down at the bottom, Lee, what you got? Who are you? Where you be? All that fun stuff.
Thank you very much for having me. Obviously, I have an accent that's slightly different to everybody else. So my name is Lee Broders. I'm an international business mentor, a life coach and a professional speaker. I'm a British Army veteran, and actually, it's a pleasure to be here. But not only that, for those who missed the music, it's great. What a cracking theme!
Yeah, luckily it's been in a couple episodes now, so they know it. Anyway, let's get into tonight's topic. Kind of a fun topic of conversation. As per usual, I'm going to start when I say the theme title of Flaws and Paws. What first comes to mind? What's the first image that jumps into your head when those words are said? Since we ended with Lee, we're going to start with Lee. Lee, you're first. Wahaha.
So, flaws. 2 takes on that for me. One is the things we stand on. But also the mistakes that we make. And then Paws, I actually misheard it. Maybe it's the accent. First, I thought it was pause, which I think is great because you always need to stop. Oh, it is pause.
It's pause, yeah.
Oh, so I thought pause is stopping and taking stock, or the nice things that animals have on the end that pad around on.
I think
all of those are really useful. So for me, it's thinking about actually the pause on the floors and actually traveling and getting to where you want to be.
Interesting. I like that way more than the original idea now. Now you've ruined it for me. Congratulations. B, how about you?
Wow. I like it because it's real. I mean, if we're talking about sort of like where we are and the community we're in, the fact that there really are flaws that just are always there, and I've got a weakness for animals, so I guess I can't go anywhere with that one. I adopt other people's. Who knows? A cat might wander in here while we're here. We'll see.
Hey,
it's the reality of the whole thing. That's what I'm liking about it.
Oh, there goes Younger. He'll be back. But yeah, we like the animals around here. Odie, what about you?
I guess when I'm thinking of flaws, I mean, I guess the characteristics that negatively impact something. When I heard flaws, now the pause part, and thinking of like actual pause, I cannot give you an answer on that. I'm still thinking about that one. So have to excuse me on that one.
I got you. Younger, last but not least, now that you're back, what you thinking? What's your thought here?
Paws and flaws. My thing that I usually think of, if you're going to put those two things together, is how little rodents can like go and grab into your food supplies and stuff, whether it be your actual personal food supplies or those of your animals and things. You know, get a little grabby. You know, they need to eat too. Unfortunately, that might cause some problems for anybody else. You know, you might get sick because, you know, rats in your food. You might get you might not have enough to feed your cows for the winter or whatever have you.
All this rat slander. How dare you, sir? But kind of the focus of tonight is more about the flaws in human beings and the paws that walk next to us as we go through our journeys, right? That's kind of the side focus for what we're talking about. Bee's got it. She's all about it. But we really want to kind of talk about what makes good people, what makes good companions, whether they are humans or the little critters that come alongside us. So we're going to start off on positive pet notes. And do you guys have a favorite pet, whether it's one that you have with you now or one that you had long ago that you will literally always remember? I kind of bring this up because I recently just put down my oldest dog, and she was with us for she was 13. We had her 11 years, so slightly before me and my wife got married, she got a dog, and she's been with us ever since. You know, first bit of our little family that started. So that was a fantastic companion for a very long time. Very much a couch dog, very lazy. The worst alarm in the world because you go up and lick new people. until she saw them, and then she would bark for 40 minutes. It'd be the same person she's seen 28 times. She knows this person. She's still going to bark for the first 5 minutes in the house. Total new stranger? Nothing. Quiet. Silence. Someone she knows very well? Ridiculous. B, you seem very excited about this topic, so I'm going to start with you.
I've actually had some pet sitting gigs lately for all that. And when I moved, I'm in Portland. I don't think I mentioned that, Oregon, since there's two. And I ended up there because I was like exploring moving back to the West Coast. And I was doing the Airbnb thing sort of right after COVID. And I got this text in the middle of the night while I was in Portland saying, how'd you like to stay here for another month and watch my dog? So I owe dogs other things. A place that actually lived during COVID, we blame the dog for the reason I was there, that it was all her idea, and the people just went along with it. And I've had a lot of cats, and there's a cat in the house where I'm currently staying. So when his owner's not around, he figures he's mine.
That's how cats be, right? Also, Zeb, good to have you here. Feel free to type away if you have any questions or comments over there. Odie, jumping over to you.
As far as favorite animal, I'm actually a ferret person.
A ferret
Love
person.
ferrets.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a ferret a while ago. Her name was Skylar, and trained her to like play dead. She knew how to like roll a ball, like actually get up on a ball and like roll on it. That's probably like my favorite animal is ferrets.
Nice. I would have ferrets, but my wife would beat me. I don't get exotic animals. It makes me sad.
They like to steal.
They
They love to steal things.
steal things, and they're pairs, right? You
Yes.
gotta get them in pairs, yeah. And they smell bad if you don't feed them right. That's what I've been told. Jumping down to Lee. Lee, any fun animal stories of your previous pets, if you ever had any?
Well, we've had dogs since being a child. I've not had a dog now for over 20 years. However, we have a cat, but it's not our cat, it's next door's cat. But it lives with us. Now, it's 16 years old, and it came about staying with us because my wife goes, oh, look, there's a cat outside. I went, okay, it can stay outside. Leave it outside. No, let's just feed it outside. No, don't feed the cat. What are you doing? Oh, it might come in. No, don't bring it in. Don't. And then it just adopted us, like B said. It just came in. Now it's, I think, we think it's about 16 or 17, so that's a good age for a cat, we believe. But it goes around, sprouting around everywhere, chasing things. It used to feed itself. Obviously, we'd wake up and find mice, rats, next door's ducks on the front porch. So yeah, but now she just sits in between us, licks us occasionally, and demands food. And when I say demand, it is a loud meow every time she's hungry, which seems quite often lately.
Well, that sounds like every cat I've ever dealt with in my life. Just yelling for food when they're hungry, being a pain, giving you gifts that you don't need when you don't want it. Younger, you got all kinds of pet stories. I know this. You are muted, friend.
I have all sorts of pet stories, even one that happened yesterday. My favorite one was a dog, but I think besides that, I'm going to talk about a little bit different one. We had a turkey. We actually had several turkeys, but we had chickens, and raccoons kept on getting into our chicken coop. And when I was a kid, I was like, well, like the turkey's big, like I'm sure it could like scare away something, you know? And I didn't know any better. And so I just assumed like, oh, it's bigger so it can fly, right? And so I would go to the top of my porch as a little kid and like throw the turkey off, and it would flap its wings as best as it could. Well, I did this enough to the point where the turkey could actually fly, because I did not know that turkeys should not be able to fly. When they're that particular subspecies of like man-made bred turkeys, it's like little white ones. It most assuredly could fly. It could fly very, very far as an adult. it became an attack turkey. So if I told it to sick somebody, it would go start yelling at them and like pecking towards them and stuff. But other than that, super friendly. Like if you didn't tell it to attack, it was super friendly. It kept out all of the bad stuff. So like any mice or anything that tried to mess with the chickens or their eggs, like just got it. One day I went outside to try to deal with a raccoon that was trying to get in the coop, and the turkey had already taken care of the problem. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, that's cool. So a little bit different. Eventually, the turkey was super friendly to people, so it just was super trusting. And our neighbor, before he moved, like took it for Thanksgiving and then cooked it and ate it without our permission. But besides that was a really good pet turkey who learned how to fly and was super friendly towards people and kept its herd, all together. But sad.
And here I thought they were stupid.
Yeah. They're you can teach them. It didn't know its limitations. I didn't know its limitations, and so then it suddenly didn't have as many limitations.
Man, the amount of segues off that topic. Also, Younger, you're reverbing real hard.
Oh, my bad. My volume's up like 97%.
That explain it. But so many segues off the turkey, right? We're gonna jump into the knowing your limits bit, right? When you're crafting a story companion, right? One of the things you have to forget about when you're making these sub characters, things like that, is the limits of a regular creature, right? When you're making something that you want to travel along with your group of friends and whatnot, you want them to be extraordinary. They got to be smarter than your regular creature. They got to be stronger. They got to be something, right? It makes them attractive to keep around. Sometimes it could be cuter. Sometimes it could be, again, going back into smarter. Sometimes it can just be like, it just has to be more in one category, right? So when you're building these fun creatures to add on, those are some fun examples. Can you guys think of any like media examples of those things that are applied to a companion in a show that you've seen? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think. Yes, B.
I don't have a character or an example, but I always thought that in addition to them having this extra strong thing, they always had sort of like one intentional known flaw. And that was part of the magic of them, so to speak.
Interesting.
Am I wrong?
No, I don't think so. That's going to be my next question, but you're on it, so you're good. You guys think of any other examples? I have one good one that I can think of that's a pretty common trope.
I'd like to say
an easy one.
We'll go with Lee first, and then we'll get to Younger.
Well, you're saying about this. So one of the things that when Young said about his turkey, and I think this is one of the things that we as humans and people are, we limit ourselves because we're told that we have limits. Whereas the turkey, as children, they don't know they can't do something because they haven't been told they can't. So having a limitless life is something I'm hugely about, and we can actually do anything we want. Now, one of the things I say, I'd like to say I'm cute because that'd be a lovely characteristic. However, I'm not sure my wife would actually agree with that. But as for having characters, for me, it would be loyalty. So having loyalty, and that goes for everything that you're with, knowing that someone will have your back throughout. Because a lot of the time, we don't have our own backs, let alone having someone to have ours. If that makes sense.
Yep, totally does. I get that. Any other thoughts before I move on to anyone else? I'm gonna chat in the chat over here. It says Zeb over here. I agree with B. Characters need to have both strengths and flaws. I hope it only helps with suspension of disbelief aspect, as well as making them more entertaining characters. I 100% agree, Zeb. Ode, Younger, you guys sound like you had other things. What do you guys got? We'll start with Ode and finish with Younger.
Oh, okay. As far as like character of example, it kind of reminds me when you look at like the Pokemon series and like Ash, as like how he goes on, he collects more Pokemon, but his main partner is Pikachu, and Pikachu complement him pretty well. So like Pikachu not only has the potential to, evolve, but choose not to. And I think like that's just like such a big, I guess, character representation because it's one of those things that like I feel like Pikachu's like afraid to evolve and like leave like what Ash has always known Pikachu to be. And I feel like, when you watch that show, like Pikachu has been the most loyal Pokemon throughout that whole show, like even from start to finish. And you see the evolution between Ash, like the failures, the successes that he has, and Pikachu compliments him in a way by adding him like only that companionship, but brings that unbreakable bond and friendship. So when I think of companion, I think of like Pikachu.
Interesting. Okay, I like that example. Younger, you got any others?
Yeah, I think a trait that a lot of them hold is reliability. So, and that goes for a bunch of different things. Whether it's the villain who goes and puts up their arm as they get taken away by their evil flying monkey, or Dobby coming in last second, with something up his sleeve, in Harry Potter, even though that's not an animal, that's a companion.
Some wizards would disagree with you, and those wizards are wrong.
Like whether it be unexpected or intentional, they are reliable, and they'll come to the aid of the character, in a dire strait or like in the need of escape, or come to their defense last second, whatever have you.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, reliability, loyalty. I'm hearing a pretty common theme of a major modifier in most of these characters. But I think my favorite example of this is horses in cowboy movies. The horse is always smarter than the rider. What's the Hi Ho Silver Away? I can't remember the name of that show. But the horse in that one
Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger. Thank you. Lone Ranger's a badass, but he ain't nothing without his horse. You know what I mean? And in a lot of ways, there is that characteristic. Now, to jump over to what B was talking about, right? All these characters that we love as companions also generally have flaws, right? But in animals, 99% of the time, the flaw is they can't talk, right? They can't tell you you're being a dumbass, or they can't comfort you when you're crying, things like that. Is there any other major narrative flaws that you guys can think of for some of the examples that you made? So. Since our clearest example over here was Pikachu, let's start with you.
So I would say with Pikachu, I would say like Pikachu kind of like major flaw is like it limited itself. So I feel like when it comes down to the opportunity to evolve to become stronger, Pikachu chooses to stay itself to remain by Ash's side. So like I think that would like be a flaw. It's like Pikachu is unwilling to change and evolve into something better, to stick by Ash's side. And even though he's reliable, like we said, it's still, I think that's like such a big flaw that holds him back. Like typically a Pokemon throughout the show, once they get strong enough, they evolve, they grow stronger, they get to their highest level. But I feel like Pikachu limits itself to stay at Pikachu instead of evolving to Raichu, which will make him significantly stronger. So I think that's like a flaw I can think about when it comes to Pikachu.
There is an interesting mechanic in the games though that they introduced. The longer you stay at a lower level, sometimes it unlocks specific moves that they can't get later unless they wait a certain amount of time for it, kind of thing. Which I always thought was an interesting mechanic to throw in there like after the first generation of Pokemon. Because if I remember correctly, if you got red, blue, or yellow, that wasn't a thing. You didn't worry about it. That didn't happen until like the anime came out and Pikachu didn't want to evolve. And I mean, on that note, it would be interesting, just as a Pokemon fan over here, to see the difference between Pikachu and Ash's Raichu. See if there's a major power gap or anything like that, or if they became significantly stronger being in the evolved form, or if it was just the same but a different outside. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that would be interesting. All right, jumping on, same question, jumping to younger this time.
So I'm actually going to tie it to your creature's flaw, Roger.
Okay, feel free.
The limitations of the individual creature. A horse is great if you're on open grasslands, even, small rivers that you need to trudge through, but it might not be suitable for climbing a mountain. You might have needed a different type of companion to scale that cliff, or to, get your raft back to the shore while you're in the ocean.
That is fair. Jumping down to Lee.
So I'm going to go back in time because with Ode and Rook talking about Pikachu and Pokemon, as it might be hard to tell, but I'm probably of a different generation, slightly older. But I know no one will say anything. But for me, it was thinking about Scooby Doo and his flaws. For me, two flaws he had. One, he was always eating, which actually probably isn't a flaw, but very animal. But two, he was scared, which doesn't really go down well when you're a ghost hunter team. So tying that in, and actually as a companion, him and Shaggy were so close because they had the same, I'll say, attributes, not flaws, because flaws people see them as negatives, but as attributes, they can also be powerful. Like when they are being chased, they're the fastest out the door. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
100%. Yes. Bringing up Scooby Doo is a great point because he is very much an in between a person and a creature as a cartoon, and he gets to embody both pretty well. I'll tag on that one in a second because that goes into the next bit a little bit more. But to finish off, B, what about you? Any other major tropes or flaws in animal companions you can think of?
Well, thank you for some time to think about it. I want to go to Younger's example and go with Dobby again, because both his flaw was also a strength, because one of his flaws was he was so completely honest and loyal. So he was doing everything sort of by the book or whatever, and it was only through the flaw itself that part of the whole plot emerges. I haven't thought this through. This is like the last 2 seconds, but that's sort of that's what I was thinking of, because his whole loyalty, his loyalty and honesty were taken advantage of, and therefore by other people misunderstood. Anyway, I just want to. I'll offer that as an example. Did I lose you?
No, you're good. That's an interesting way to go with that. So onto our in between a person and a creature, right? Lots of fictional, especially in the cartoon space, right? You get that in between something that is very humanized, but is still an animal. Avatar: The Last Airbender is great for Momo the monkey, right? Very, very human-esque character that is still an animal all in its own right. But that can kind of lead to some confusing quality, especially when you're on a TTRPG scale and you're trying to voice a horse. Sometimes you forget it's a horse you're voicing and not another character, right? So sometimes you just need to add people, right? If you want a companion that isn't necessarily the strongest super fighter like the rest of your team, having a good character to travel along with your people that isn't necessarily combat focused, they're storyline, hook beat, whatever you want to call them, NPC, right? Having them along is going to be relatively important. I'm going to start with Ode here because you are a resident storyteller besides ourselves here. When you make your own characters, right? How do you make sure that they are they flow well with your main characters, right? When you're telling your stories, how do you make sure that your side characters A, don't overshadow, but B, mesh well, or don't mesh well? Because again, we'll talk about flaws in a minute.
So the way that I can describe how I do that is I understand the character. So I tell myself that this character, are they a filler? or are they a dependent variable? So when it comes down to the actual character, does this character, if they goes absent, does it affect the story at all? Like a random cat walking in the background does not affect the story. But like you said, companionship, like prime example for Ash Pikachu. Something happens to Pikachu that affects Ash's whole entire journey. Like without Pikachu, Ash just doesn't grow, he doesn't get stronger, he doesn't evolve until he to the person that he becomes. So when I'm creating these characters, I'm understanding like, okay, if this is a character that literally affects the storyline, affects the plot. So I craft the story around those characters and say, okay, without this person, how far can the main protagonist go? Would it change the story for this person to die off or leave on a journey? Like, how would it affect the story? So, for characters that I feel like are less important, I would put them in areas where it doesn't directly affect the story. Like it might be a simple beggar on the road that comes up and asks for change. That's not going to affect anything. But as far as dependent variable characters that I have in the story, I put them in more prominent roles. Like, for instance, in my series Game of Blue, Juno's sister, which is Naomi, saves him from when they're escaping from their home, and by her saving him affected the story. By her risking her life to make sure that he escaped, help progress the story for him to go on to become who he was later on in the story. But without her doing that, then both of the characters would most likely would have died. But it's like she would be a dependent variable character to me. Is that she physically affected the story with her actions.
Interesting. Okay. So an easy way to determine is if you remove them, it would be significant.
Yes. If you remove this character, how would it affect the plot? If it doesn't affect the plot, then it's just to fill the character. But if it does drastically change the story, then to me, I call that character a dependent variable in the story.
Interesting. Okay. All right. All right. I like that. B, I'm gonna jump over to you. When you're working with your clients and whatnot, right? How do you make sure that they're set up with the right people, right? When they're finding their companions, how do you make sure that you're filling into the right places in their lives?
Well, it's sort of related to what we're talking about in terms of plots and other things, because there are things that people are not good at. And when we talk about flaws, I mean, this isn't people I work with necessarily, but let's just say me, for example. Right now, my paw is healing, and so I have to actually ask for help to get things, and so you would not somebody do that. If I know other practitioners, other people that are working with either health or finance or well, those are the two main ones right this second, but other, and a lot of times you don't even know until you're talking to someone what it is that they are missing. If we're talking about external characters that we're bringing in, it's different when you're talking about also about yourself and the multiple layers and the different people that we embody. I mean, sometimes I used to talk about playing roles, and I was in this therapy group, and they got so mad because I was the only one in there was a mom, and I'd talk about playing mom, and they thought it was heresy. But the point of fact is it's not that you aren't always those things, but there's certain roles that you take on, and helping people learn to do that, and also learning what other external characters need to come in to strengthen something, such as a finance person or a health person or whatever. Does that answer your question, Rook?
It does. I think that's a great answer for it. Jumping down to Lee. Lee, when you're working with your entrepreneurial startups and other people running their business, how do you make sure that they are being an authentic I can't talk, y'all. An authentic version of the main character, right? How do you make sure that they aren't relinquishing themselves to just a side piece in their own business?
So this is actually listening to Ode and B. For me, I've written an article on this. As a mentor, I'm not the hero of the journey. And going on to people like Storybrand, it's all I'm there is I'm the mentor. I'm the guide. Now, everyone's story is based around them being the hero, and when they're the hero, they have a sidekick, whether it's Batman and Robin, whether it's Tony Stark and Captain America. Not sure who's the main character there. Very hard to play.
Depends on what movie.
So, and we can go to movies like Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, or in Hunger Games, Angus is the guide. And so for me, it's more about how you can guide people along the right route. Now, you said about characters in the role playing. I always think about not the sage, but the healer. They're an essential part of the team, because if someone gets hurt, even though they're not, say, a combatant part of the team, they're the ones that actually save people's lives. Like Ode said about, is it Naomi, who saves the protagonist, who saves the protagonist, and that has a knock-on effect of the things that happen. And one of the things I like to say, I don't know whether you actually remember, there was a series called The Fall Guy, which was Lee Majors, the $1 Million Man. And the theme tune of that was, in the words was, "I'm the unknown stuntman that made Eastwood look so far." Now, for me, the main character is the important one, but they're important because of the people around them. And that goes into when you are the hero, you will have a team around you that are as important to you. However, they're not in the limelight as much as you. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I got that. That's right there with it.
Yeah.
Jumping down to younger. When you're crafting your NPCs to go along with your party, how do you what is your secret sauce? How do you make your characters rememberable? We'll use the word rememberable.
My secret sauce. I like to pull a little piece from the Indiana Jones themes. Each dungeon has its own unique sets of circumstances that prove to be challenges for the players. You know, whether that be in literal dungeon or going out into the swamp. You know, your party might have a healer, it might have a warrior, it might have a mage, but if you're going dungeon delving, there might be traps, you know, and so you need a rogue, somebody who can disarm the traps, you know, look their way around. You know, if you're going into an ancient tomb, you know, you might need somebody who can read the ancient writings that are on the walls, you know, some scholarly logic. They're not really good at, you know, casting spells or swinging swords, but at least they can read, which can be a pretty helpful tool, you know, to avoid all sorts of problems. You know, or tell the mage on how they can undo the magic spell glyph, you know, any number of things.
Gotcha.
So I like going and having the filler characters just fulfill a role that the main characters cannot do by themselves.
That's a fantastic way to add those characters to your story, where they complement who you already have. Now, on the opposite ends, characters need flaws. We could all agree to that statement, right? When you're writing a story, they're gonna have flaws. Otherwise, they're boring, right? So, specifically, we're going to start with Lee, since we ended it with him last, or I guess we ended with Younger last, but I'll get to him because he goes before I do. Wahaha. But Lee, when you are trying to point out possible flaws to the people you're working with, how do you gently do it to where you're not completely blowing up their self-designed world? Is the term I'm going to go with here.
Well, I think it's identifying what the flaw is, but not for me to identify it, but for them to identify it. Okay. And that's the hardest part, really. We all know we're not perfect, but we're not sure about what we're not perfect about. Okay. So it's getting them and finding out what their, and I'll use the word, their perception of what could be their flaws, because that's the way they view the world. And then reframing that to actually get them to understand if it is a flaw. Now, see flaws as strengths and strengths as flaws, and it's all very subjective as opposed to being written down on paper and that's the way it is. But it's, for me, it's about nurturing people to understand that even if they have a flaw, it doesn't define them. And that's one of the things that most people, a lot of us, and I'll say us because I'm one of them too, we see our flaws as things that define us. When we can actually redefine that the flaw is not us, the flaw is a small part of what we do, what we are, and who we are, then that, going back to the companion and what Jung says, we can possibly use that flaw as a strength to complement what we do.
Okay, interesting. So that's a positive way to look at it, to say the least. Jumping over to B. B, when you are taking your role on, right, or were taking your role on, when you're acting your mom, and you said you were dealing with people that just didn't want to accept that could have been your reality. How did you convince them that it was okay to feel that way?
In that particular group, I didn't even try. I just stopped using that terminology and figured they were missing out.
Okay,
I was a little young, but on another place, and I've actually read about this recently, where somebody was talking about it or whatever, just the strength of being able to put on whatever the role is that you need at a particular moment, which doesn't make you any different than being yourself, but just lets you strengthen that particular place. So there are times when I might need to be a writer, or I might need to claim that I love airports. You know, there's these different ideas. And the other flip side of that, if we're thinking about flaws, and I just wanted to build a little bit on what Lee said, is that we also sometimes use them to prove to other people that we're human so they can take us seriously. I mean, like if I say that I shouldn't be allowed to do anything that demands working with paper or small muscle coordination, you'll laugh. I mean, because it's a throwaway remark. It's also true, but it's a throwaway remark that I'm not necessarily proud of, but it's not a character flaw that's going to like keep me from talking to you all.
Interesting. Okay. Small takeaway, throwaway flaws. An interesting way to throw designs in there and make characters likable. I like that. Ode, what about you? When you're writing your characters and you're writing your flaws, one thing that's nice about your writing is you're not afraid to add flaws to the characters. So how do you do that so well?
So the way that I look at flaws, I feel like they're, and this is probably not a different word than people would say it is a delayed strength. So in particular moments, Juno makes a good decision. You know, he comes out on top, but his major flaw is that he's not confident in himself. He doesn't truly believe that it's going to work out. He just does it, and it tends to work out. And most people will say, like, well, that's a good thing. He's humble. He's able to learn from his mistakes. But other people will question that and say, well, in a time of the moment, that's not what we particularly need. Is someone that doesn't have that confidence in themselves to believe it's going to happen. You know, most of my characters have those contrasting things. As far as one of my other characters, her name's Riesling. She's a trained assassin, but the one thing that she lacked before was empathy. You know, she was just trained to kill. So she would just, whatever it took, whoever it was, she eliminated them. But as she grew and progressed, she understood that she has a lack of empathy towards just anything. I mean, she would just literally kill anything that was given to her. But people would challenge that and say, well, that's actually a strength because in the middle of the story, they're in a war. So you want someone that's trained to kill, to go that an extra mile to eliminate your enemies. So that's why I say this delayed strength. I feel like a flaw could be categorized as a flaw in the wrong situation. but put it in the right situation it becomes a strength. So I feel like you look at it both ways and you understand that it's just like Will Youngkin said, a horse. You're not going to put a horse in the air. Can't do nothing. But hey, if you need something fast on the ground, you got a horse. If you need an eagle to fly you somewhere, you're not going to put it in the water. It's just like I'm saying, delayed strength. If you put them in the right situation, that flaw becomes a strength. You put them in the wrong situation, that strength becomes a flaw. So it's like a flip of the coin.
To touch on a media touchstone here, I think a movie that does this really well is Signs. I don't know if you guys remember that one at all, but one of the silly flaws they gave to one of the characters was the little girl would drink a glass of water and just set it somewhere. She'd take like a sip and just leave it. Right, that was just something she did all the time, and it drove the dad character crazy because he's always cleaning up these cups everywhere. And at the very end, it turns out that the big bad evil aliens that are there. Sorry for anyone who hasn't watched this 20-year-old movie. But big bad aliens that are causing all the havoc and whatnot show up, and their weakness is water, which I don't know why you came to Earth. That was a wrong choice, aliens, but whatever. And so they find out by smashing one of these things on accident on top of one of the aliens, and it freaks out. So then one of the other characters just starts breaking all the bottles to fight off this alien that has been, invulnerable to everything else except for splashes of water. But one of those major, here's a weird character flaw that was the luckiest thing in the world, right? And as writers or people playing these TTRPGs, it's okay to have those moments, right? Taking those major flaws or silly flaws and turning them into a major boon at the appropriate time will make a memorable story. You will remember those bits for forever. Now, not to skip over younger, kind of on that range. When you're building flaws into your characters, because I know you do this quite often for funsies. What's your secret sauce?
So before I get too deep, do you mean the player characters, or do you mean the NPCs who are traveling with them, or the villains?
No, NPCs specifically. We'll talk about villains another day. Wahaha.
Okay, so with the people who are going along with the crew, I normally have the flaws be something like they get into trouble, or they have a habit of attracting trouble, right? Whether that be due to bad habits like, the thief, got caught red-handed and you have to get this thief out of jail before you can go into the dungeon with him, So now you might have to go and do some, scheming around to try to either legally get him out of the system, whether that be, I'm going to pay his bond, or you have to become a criminal yourself and escape the city with this guy through the sewers. Adding their problems to become the problems of the party, right? Because the party's like, oh yeah, we went back for blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, well, you see, so-and-so actually has a big, there's a big fiasco going with this local orc tribe, and so you're going to have to, get involved in his dealings before you can separate him to go on your adventure. It adds little side quests essentially. But I would really like to hit on something that B said that really struck with me.
Please go ahead.
When I was in the army, because I was in the United States Army. At one point, there's kind of a saying. It's not really a saying, but before you have experience doing something, you have to put on a face as a non-commissioned officer. That you do, you have to have that confidence in doing something. Otherwise, other people aren't going to have confidence in you, and then they might not be able to fulfill their tasks appropriately. So, even if you've never been a mom before, you have to start acting like a mom, when it becomes time to be a mom, right? Whether you have experience or not, that's just the way that life works. And so when things like that happen, generally you look to a mentor, or in that case, a motherly figure, somebody you could replicate what they do, or, just in the sense of a D&D story, whoever that character's idol is, right? Who were the people that helped, form that character into who they were today? And who do they need to be to be able to accomplish and face that problem of which they're facing? because until they have faced that problem, unless they're just driven by straight rage or whatever, like they're going to be putting on that mask in order to do that, right? And then maybe after they've done that, it's no longer a mask, but they had to put the mask on at least once.
Just as a side note, characters that
Yeah,
just
and
solve
then I
everything
think
by
that
being angry, hilarious characters.
No, but I think elements like that are what like the flaws, like a flaw in a story is something that a character overcomes. You know, like it's not a good story if the character's not overcoming a flaw, right? Like at some point.
Every anime
Yeah,
protagonist
I
in the
get
last
that.
10 years.
And somebody becoming their mask is a traditional plot line.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I feel like sometimes you can ruin the story if you make a character become useless by its flaw. And I feel like that just depreciates the story in certain areas because now this character is useless. Instead of giving that character that's a flaw that they can work through and then use it as a strength in the right moments or grow through them to grow and progress throughout the story. And I feel like a lot of times people kind of alienate and isolate a character and give him nowhere to grow. So they give him like a ridiculous flaw that can't be overturned or even worked through to help it progress. And I feel like that is a huge blemish that can like be detrimental later in the story.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, if you put too many characters that are the opposite of being perfect, right? If they are just unbuildable, we'll say, they're also unenjoyable.
Yes.
Something that Younger said as well, sorry, as I was going to say, one, thank you for your service. I didn't realise you were a US Army. But also, and what B said is, if you act like the person you want to be as opposed to the person you are, you will grow into that person.
There's a plot, another standard plot thing that for some reason I'm just enjoying in my head while I'm listening to everybody, and that is the really, really, really good person, good thief. I mean, the thief that's really good at his craft. I mean, he can pick any lock. He can pick your pocket with Rook sitting up in Alaska and me here. I mean, you know, it's that kind of a person, and somehow he gets either found out or converted, depending on which book you're reading. But the fact that he can do that becomes essential for the plot at some point. I mean, something has to be stolen, or they have to break in somewhere, or they have to do whatever. And so they're taking what maybe isn't necessarily a flaw, but it's at least seen in part of society as negative, and it's twisted around to often a main part of the plot.
I was gonna say just like Odie's character, you know, being a merciless killer was a horrible thing until they needed more merciless killers.
Yeah, and to that point is I think when you exploit a flaw, I think it also makes it interesting as well because I feel like a lot of times most people don't grow until they actually get into a conflict where they have to face their flaws or face their weaknesses. So I think when you exploit that in a show or a game or even in a story, it really helps progress it because now it's like you're forcing that character either to become stagnant or you're forcing that character to grow. So when you exploit their flaws, it's like you're giving them a chance to become relevant. So it's like you're adding a spotlight to them by honing in on what they lack the most.
Nice. Nice. Well, unfortunately here we're
I
getting
think
what you got?
I was gonna say, I think like one of my favorite tropes kind of is a character getting terribly maimed, you know, like their arm gets cut off or like they go completely blind. And like I'll use the case of the blind one. Somebody goes blind, that's a terrible thing to happen, right? And then it's like you're gonna probably assume that person's gonna be useless, but like in an anime or something, that person then might be able to gain perception, you know, like echolocation like abilities where they can learn to perceive the world around them despite having that flaw of vision, where they use like the power of their mind and ingenuity to come up with alternate methods to overcoming that particular boundary that others did not necessarily think were possible. I think that that's an element of character growth, especially within the fantastical realm.
I agree wholeheartedly. But on that note, we are running low on time, so I'm going to get our final thoughts and where people can find you and all that fun stuff, and then we're free to chit chat afterwards. But for now, Odie, we're gonna start with you. Final thoughts on our flaws, and making companions for your table.
Final thoughts would simply be as, and I think honestly, assessing the character to the situation will help us understand that it's not particularly a flaw. It's, I guess, putting them in a situation where it could actually be a strength, but since there are in not in a particular way they can to excel, it becomes a flaw. So just in that situation, I feel like you can't. The old saying is you can't. You put a fish on a tree and tell it to climb, the fish is gonna think it's stupid. But to put a fish in the water and it swims, it's gonna excel. You know, so I feel like by looking at the character and saying, okay, this is actually a strength, but yes, in consideration of the task that it has to accomplish, it is a flaw, but it can be it could be reversed to be a strength later on, putting in the right situation. So I think that is what I have pulled from this conversation and what I use a lot of times when it comes down to my own story plots. Once again, my name is Ode. I am the owner of Eyeball Productions. We specialize in graphic novels and mangas with a focus on animations. You can find me at Eyeball Productions at Facebook and on Instagram.
Fantastic. Miss B.
Well, I'm still B. B Sedgwick. You can find me also again on Facebook as well. You can find Spirit Moxie on Facebook, and you can also find B Sedgwick on Facebook. And you can find me as Spirit Moxie on Instagram and multiple other places. I have 2 books. One's called Moxie Moves, 10 Easy Ways to Make a Powerful Difference. And the other one is called Talking to Trees Through Poetry and Pictures, which I really think is also about identity, so it's not completely unrelated. And my most recent thing that I want to play with that's really been part of it, I really am into helping people transform their relationship to time. And I'm a great believer that there's a wholeness in people that includes all their flaws. And that they, even within that, they make a difference and they matter.
Nice. I like that final thought. And last but not least, Mr. Lee.
So, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with these other amazing people. Final thoughts on, I think, when we create characters, whether they're for a story, whether they're for a game, for role play, or even a film, a lot of us goes into those characters. A lot of our flaws manifest themselves, and a lot of the strengths that we want also manifest themselves. So I think also we need to think about the fact that we are those characters in essence, and not being scared of the strengths that we want, facing the flaws that we have, and as Odie said, and Younger and B, turn those flaws into the superpowers that they can be in the right situation. Odie's one about the fish in the tree. I use that analogy hugely because I talk about the education system not being as great as it should be. But no, thank you very much. My name's Lee Broders. If you Google me, which is the term people use nowadays, in my days it was Alta Vista. But if you Google me, I should come up somewhere. There's only one of me, thankfully, because if there was 2, we'd be in a very sad state in this world. But Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Younger, before we get out, it's a new month. We're in February, and this is actually like our first production this month because of sickness and whatnot at the beginning of it, which means you get to tell me what our 10% off code is for the website this week.
Oh, do you want it to be positive or negative?
It's Valentine's, so make it negative.
Oh, heartbreak.
Heartbreak. All right, that's our code for this month. I'll get that updated shortly. But yeah, 10% off of the website. All the fun things that we actually sell. Thank you all for being here and listening. If you made it through the entire video, give us a like, a follow. Check us out on whatever you're seeing us on. Zeb, if you're still in the audience, thank you for hanging out and chatting with us tonight. And for everyone else that watched the entire time, much appreciative. Last but not least for you guests, I need a number between 1 and 12. And I'm gonna basically average between what you guys say and get the right song as our exit musical silliness. And then if you guys could stick around after the song to do our after action review, that would be great.
8.
I'm gonna go with 8.
8? Oh, 2 8s in a row. You guys are on it. Lee, you want to third the 8, or you're gonna throw a different number in there?
No, I'm going top of the shot. Always aim high. I'm going for 12.
12. All right. Let's see. Oh, okay. Interesting. This one's called Heroes at the Table. All right. And with adventure in mind, have a wonderful time. Bye.
Pull up a chair, it's time to unite. Where friendships are forged by the firelight. We are the bold, we are the brave. In this world of dice, it's adventure we crave. The rose-green flashes as they pick the lock. With a wink and a smile, they're quick as a hawk. Sneaking through shadows, the plans in hand. They'll get us inside with a roll so grand. We're the heroes at the table, side by side. Rolling the dice, let's enjoy the ride. With laughter, plans, and hearts so true, we forge a story in everything we do. Wizard calls forth lightning from the sky. With a flick of their staff, we watch it fly. Ancient spells from forgotten days, they turn the tides in surprising ways. We're the heroes at the table, side by side. Rolling the dice, let's enjoy the ride. With laughter, plans, and hearts so true, we forge a story in everything we do. Shout shakes the very ground. With every swing they astound. Charging forward, no fear in their eyes. They fight for the team and the glorious prize. We're the heroes at the table, side by side. Rolling the dice, let's enjoy the ride. With laughter, plans, and hearts so true, we forge a story in everything we do. Together we rise, together we fall. No adventure too big, no challenge too small. We ride our tale with every roll. As heroes, as friends, we conquer it all. We do.